My next guest has been requested by you many times over. And he was somebody I always wanted to get on this particular show. And when I called him up, he immediately said yes to me. You need to guess who my next guest is, and I'm going to give you some cues. He's an academic chef. He's an operational chef. He's a revered chef. He's a cycling chef. He's a kind-hearted chef. He's a generous chef. Do you have any guesses? If not, you need to watch this podcast. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Chef, drum rolls, Parvinder Bali. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Kunal. Thank you so much.
It's absolutely. And for our Punjabi audiences, Veere, right? How are you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for being here in the season 2 of Talk with Kunal Vasudeva.
My pleasure.
And my sincere apologies. You had to wait, and you know the reason why. But tell me something, Parvinder. When you see institutions something like this, or the Institute of Excellence that you have been associated with for many decades, do you think culinary is in safe hands in India?
Yeah, I think so, and I believe so. That, few decades ago, culinary education or even stepping into a world to make a career in culinary was never looked as a most prospective career, I would say. On the other hand, people would degrade it and also say that, aur kuch karne ko nahi mila, and you're doing this and you'll become a bawarchi and all that. But thanks to all the, television and the media, where the chef has actually become a revered profession, I would say. And even so much so that the government of India recognizes it as an art, where there are 2 chefs who have got the Padma Shri. So which is a great thing, and I'm really proud to be a chef. And I always see these people doing some wonderful things, across food. And I think slowly we are putting that map, our culinary, the country on the culinary map of the world. So it is definitely in the safe hands, and it's definitely good.
Here you were an operational chef, and you became an academic chef as well. Where does that transition happen?
So I think a story, little bit, I would say, like a Milkha Singh, where his passion was not to run, but I think he started running for that glass of milk, where eventually the running became his passion, and he is the gentleman that he is today. I think I come from a very, I don't know the word to really put it, but really I thought of joining the academics because I had suddenly burnt myself out, and I was working like 17 hours a day. I didn't see my children grow, and here's an opportunity that landed up to me, and I was very excited because of that 5 days week, 9 to 5 working, celebrating Christmas and Diwali at home. So that was my first thing that I said yes to. And of course, I was going back from a very busy operations to Oberoi Center of Learning and Development. So there was a little butterflies in my stomach because I've graduated from the same school, which was my alma mater. So there was a mixed bag of things. But since I was in a very comfort zone, and I had worked with Oberoi's before, and I had only left Oberoi's for 2 years to open up ITC Hotel. So a call back from Mr. Oberoi was very encouraging. And I said, why not? Let's do that for 2 years.
But isn't it different, Parvinder? Being an operational chef is about your creations. And being an academic chef is about teaching the right from wrong right? And that requires a completely different skill set. How did you manage that?
Well, I was always a hands-on chef. And, thanks to my being a chef, I started my career in bakery and pastry. So pastry was really strong career, culinary aspect of mine. But also when I went to the Oberoi Grand from the Oberoi, New Delhi, as a pastry chef, I realized, we did not have a pastry shop at the Oberoi Grand. There was only one restaurant where we would put up 6 desserts, and largely those banquets. And I had worked with a lot of expat chefs. So when I went into Calcutta, this I'm talking about September of 1998, people hadn't seen the modern plated desserts. They hadn't really thought of, the buffet desserts on broken granite pieces. Since my experience of working with German chef and, French chef and a Swiss chef, I learned that art of creativity and presented desserts in a very, very wacky manner. For somebody to see a classic like a baba rum soaked in a shot glass with things was really
And was
eye-catching.
Calcutta an evolved market for something like it wasn't,
but
right?
probably it got evolved within 1 month.
Got
And
it.
everybody started coming to the Oberoi Grand. Then they would call and ask if I was there. So that kind of gave me a kick. So, I really took the pastry.
And were you the chef who was in the front of the house as well?
I was, because I was called there and I suddenly got very popular. In 6 months, I was the most popular chef of Calcutta, where, there was a talk between, it's a closed customer thing. And we only used to have a couple of handful of hotels. So if people were dining somewhere, they would always come back for dessert to Oberoi Grand. So I became like synonymous with the desserts. But then I hadn't, since there was no pastry shop, there was not something to, keep myself really busy. I started working in the other areas of the kitchen, like Thai, Western. Indian, I was always scared of, and there's a reason for it. And a lot of pastry chefs would resonate with this thought, because as a pastry chef, you're very process oriented. You're always about this 2 grams of things can make a difference.
The chemistry.
Yeah. The same amount of, flour, butter, egg, sugar can either make a cake, a cookie, a bread. So for me to learn andazas or pinch of this and a handful of this, which happened in the Indian kitchen, was never my cup of tea. And I was very intimidated by Indian cuisine. And Mr. Oberoi, of course, was very, very grateful. I'm very grateful to him, full of gratitude, because I wanted to move out of pastry and also work in other kitchens. And he said, well, you don't have experience in the other kitchens. So I said, Mr. Oberoi, I will learn. And he sent me 3 months to Melbourne, where I worked with, I think, some of the greatest chefs. I worked with Marco Pierre White for a week, and he had come to do a food promotion. I worked with Wolfgang Park. I worked with Barlotti's family. They ran a 350 cover Italian fine dining restaurant. So that was mind blowing. And when I came back to Calcutta, I was full of, energy and started introducing new dishes and all that. And until, after 1 year, something happened, and my general manager, Mr. Ranveer Bhandari, great guy, and he was moving to ITC Hotels. He said, partner, let's go. And my thing was about Indian cooking. And, I met Chef Gill and Imtiaz Qureshi, and I was so overwhelmed, about the knowledge of Indian cuisine and everything. And I said, why not? So it was really to learn the skill. And I was very happy that, I was opening up a hotel. In ITC, I started traveling the world around to do Indian food promotions. And I went to Vietnam, I went to Brunei Darussalam, and because that time the hotel was a Sheraton, and I started touring many countries. And I realized wherever I went, I set up the kitchen. And during the day when Visa Plus was happening, I was increasing my knowledge by working in a sushi section, and I'm working in the Chinese dim sums and stuff like that. And I would bring all that expertise back and introduce back into the hotels. So I think then Chairman Mr. Deveshwar really got excited and happy for this, and he said, "Ab jo bhi promotion hoga, make sure Bali goes." So I really, in that 2 years of stint with ITC, I think I traveled so many places, and I added so much of value to myself that I was kind of, like overflowing with my knowledge, with my skill, which I think is very important then to share with the coming generation.
Tell me, Parvinder, from what I'm kind of hearing from you, and this is literally, it cuts across everybody who is a domain expert.
Yeah.
is the fact that they not only look at their knowledge, but they look at adjacent knowledge and they look at adjacent skills.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm kind of hearing from you.
Yeah.
And although here you were a bakery and a pastry chef, but you looked at everything else. Obviously, this trade-off is time and family sacrifice.
Yes, that's true.
And did that happen to you as well?
No, of course, and I thank my family. I barely saw my kid growing up. I was blessed with a boy in year of 2000, and I would leave 7 o'clock in the morning to go to the hotel. I would come like 1 o'clock in the night. I would play with him like for 2 hours. I would go to bed at 3 and 4 hours of sleep, and I was back to the hotel. So that is another reason why I chose OCLD, because I wanted some family time. But I was very confident because I was relating when I traveled all across the world. I was very confident of certain skill set that I had, that it never bothered me that, what am I going to do as a culinary educator? Because I think I had known Indian, I have grown up with Western as a strong base, pastry, bakery, plus Oriental. And I think it was more than sufficient even in those times of 2004 when I moved to OCLD. There was a lot more culinary skills, I think I would say.
People our generations, and we're almost the same age, and our viewers spans across from 30 to, I would say, 60. I hope the younger viewers listen in. So if the younger viewers would listen in, they would probably troll us. But I truly believe that one generation needs to sacrifice. And this is the generation which kind of sacrifice so that our children are in a better place. When I tell that to myself, I don't carry that guilt that, like you, I've never, unfortunately, could not give time. And it's just the family and the wife who actually wore all the pants in the family and took care of both my girls. I'm sure with her as well, this would have been the same thing. But now when we are in our 50s, when you kind of look back, everything looks good in hindsight.
Yes.
But the fact is, unless that sacrifice had not happened, we wouldn't have been in this place today. So unless your travel, unless your stint at the Oberois, unless Mr. Oberoi pushing you, you pushing yourself, the erstwhile, God bless his soul, Mr. Deveshwar pushing you, you wouldn't have landed that assignment of OCLD. It was because of the 20 years of grit and grind that you went through. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I tell everybody, I think cutting the tree is only 10% of the job. 90% is sharpening the axe, which I really believe in. And
a lot of our viewers also would like to know the early influences and your early childhood memories, and where did the passion of cooking even germinate?
Yeah. Okay, so there are really funny stories, and I think I don't think the younger generation, but probably the older generation, which is of my age, and I don't consider myself old.
Neither do I, right? So there's a difference between biological and chronological.
Absolutely.
Like, so, I truly believe I'm 35. I don't know about you.
No, I'm still 18.
I love it.
So I think for us, we didn't choose this industry. The industry chose us. And I really wanted to become a neurosurgeon. I'm very happy. I still wear whites. I still cut things on the table. Only the commodities are different. But I was so much into being a neurosurgeon and a doctor. And I fared up really well also. But somehow I did not get a seat into medicals. And I got a seat into engineering. So I'm a 1-year mechanical engineering from a regional engineering college. My father was in army. And that time we were posted in Kashmir. Those 1990s was not a great time. There was some trouble in the
insurgencies and stuff.
So we hardly went to school. My college was in Habakadal. So also a place which was not then in good news. So I happened to, give hotel management exams. And all the army officers' family I felt were always fascinated by this hotel management because, they always thought that great money and, people travel abroad.
And at that point in time, army, of course, there was no money.
Yes.
There was respect, but no.
Correct. So whoever my dad met, they said, wow, great. My brother-in-law is in Dubai and, he changes cars every year. And, so there was all fascinating stories around being a hotel management. And also hotel management always thought that you're going to be a manager and you'll manage and, the suit boot. And And being an army kid, I had never been to a 5-star hotel. I had always grown up in a cantonment area. And a cantonment is very secluded. You have right from the movie theaters to all the clubs and everything is,
step out.
you don't know. And you really don't know what's happening outside in the world. I grew up watching movies where I would see Prem Chopra and Ranjit drink and do bad things. And that is the reason I don't drink even till today. Because, I've grown up with that fear that, whoever drinks is a bad person. So, but I landed up into an industry.
Incidentally, my mother also thinks the same
Really?
about me. Yeah?
So, I landed up into Calcutta thinking that, I wouldn't have to do too much in a hotel management, wash a couple of dishes, do a few things, and I'll have all the time in my life for my medical ventures. And that is the reason I really joined hotel management. But I think within 6 months, this started growing on me, and I really started enjoying when we were in the classes learning about new wines and, new kind of food and the French terminology.
Did you think it was your calling at that point in time?
I think because, as a childhood, my first cousin brother used to work in UNICEF. And every time a team of doctors from France used to come. So my early years, I've grown up with French people, French doctors in Kashmir. And, they would do all the gardening and I could speak French when I was like in class second or something. And all my Tintins I've read in French. And I couldn't speak proper English, by the way, by then, but I could speak French almost like a bird. And when I was in class 4th, I remember when my father got posted to Mathura. And I first time actually saw a Tintin and I got so excited and said, Tonton. And everybody started making a joke around to say, oh, this guy even doesn't know how to read. So funny stories where I joined hotel management and this French connection came back when we were in terminologies. And I think I started recollecting my French back. And somehow I became a teacher to my students there itself. So I was taking their French tuition classes.
So was there a teacher hidden in you for a long time?
I think people found out that. And even at OCLD, I mean, my great friend Rohit Gambhir, if you ever speak to him, will always tell you that how on weekends I used to take their classes and how I used to teach them. And so yes, I think there was something that was hidden there. So, my first training at Taj Bengal, a newly opened hotel, 1998. Not even 98, where I'm jumping. 1993 or 92 when I was doing my industrial training in Taj Bengal. So that was my first interaction with chefs who had come from Caribbean cruise lines, half-bald, tattoos on their arms, and they would stick a knife into somebody's chopping board, take a bunch of asparagus and walk away. And I said, wow, this is so cool, It's like Pirates of the Caribbean. Not understanding that, they're all making it light and everything, but I think I got really carried away by that, oh, this is amazing. And, it's so cool to be a chef. I was only 21 years of age, coming back from a secluded army background.
So here you could have been in the front of the house, but you chose to be a chef.
Absolutely. Because
that fascinated you.
Another incident happened. I was in a restaurant. That restaurant was called Shonargaon. It's still there. And there was this guest who was furious. I mean, there was a manager who was standing, apologizing all the time, but the guest was so mad. It was unbelievable. And I really felt bad for that person and said, oh God, this is too much, And God bless his soul, Chef Arvind Saraswat, wearing those silver gray buttons, silver gray hair, very nice personality, looked like a brigadier out of the army. Walks into the restaurant, the guest goes quiet. The guest pulls the chair, asks chefs to sit. I made up my mind. I said, if you have to be respected, if you have to be
need to be at that level.
You need to be a chef.
And you need to be at that level of respect as well, right?
Correct. And then I started understanding what is the chef's role, really. Is it only cooking? No. And I think there was so much. I think the people skills, how you talk to people. I think about understanding financial aspect of kitchens. I think food really becomes only 10 or 15% of what you do as a chef. Rest, there is so much more. It's like an iceberg. So what you see chef cooking is just the tip of the iceberg. There is much more that goes beneath.
And tell me something, Parvinder. Do you see, for the last now 30 odd years, right? A little bit more than that. Academic, operational, travel the world. When you look at India, right? How has the F&B evolved? Because I have a certain observation as an outsider. looking at just as an Indian consumer towards F&B. But I more intrigued from your perspective. Here you were working with the hotels and different aspects, bakery to other cuisines, other kitchens. And at the same time, you've seen the evolution of standalone restaurants. How do you describe that evolution?
I think it's this way, I would say, really, because even if I talk about 3 decades ago, people of my age are very lucky. We are very tech savvy. And the younger generation might raise an eyebrow to say, no, you guys are not, we are tech savvy. And I would call the younger generation as tech dependent.
Or they are app savvy, I would say.
Yeah. But
tech,
I call them tech dependent because
Yeah.
I think it's the people like us who actually created the technology. And the beauty is that we've seen that technology grow, being made. We've used it. We've suffered from it. And we are here. So we've actually transitioned through the journey. So I think 3 decades ago, when we would see what people are eating normally, and we would see there were not too many standalone restaurants. There were the most of the masses that you would see coming is 5-star hotels. And the customer, I would say many of them were still exploring. And sometimes they were well-traveled people, of course, who knew what they were eating, and we would have all imports coming in from everywhere. But there were people also who were trying to understand and grow up. So I've come from the stages where, I've had pasta come back to me to say it's raw and then to explain what is al dente. But I think today the scenarios have changed. The guest sends back the pasta to say,
it's not cooked properly. Yeah.
No, it's overcooked.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even al dente.
Yeah,
People are using that terminology.
True.
People know what the texture of risotto has to be. People know what's a well done and what's a medium done salmon. They understand the different types of wine and pairing. People have started understanding chocolate. So I think in terms of good quality, I would say that we are not still there, but I think we've started on the journey where we are exploring, where we are ready, where we are open to the cuisines of the world. And I think that's a great change, what I see.
But tell me something. Again, there has been these conversations, and this conversation is right there in the public domain as well, that hotel chefs have not innovated themselves as much as, let's say, I would say, independent restaurant chefs. Now, is this even a fact?
I would completely disagree with that, but agree to it in one way. I don't think that the hotel chefs are not creative. There are different challenges, I would say.
I meant innovative and not creative.
No, they're very innovative. They're very creative. The only issue is that they have to work in a certain mindset. They have to work in a certain broad umbrella of a lot of things. And one of the thing also is the customers. The kind of customers that a free standalone restaurant, independent restaurant gets is very, very, diverse, demanding, and they're open to trying new things. The customer set on the hotels is the fixed clientele. Sometimes, people who are coming on a banquet, something. So there's a very fixed clientele that you have in a hotel, and people don't want to experiment a lot. The second thing is, about the layer management. In an independent restaurant, the chef is the king because he's the owner of that restaurant. So it is very easy and quick to make decisions and, do things and get new ingredient or get this technology and, make it happen. And see if it fails, doesn't matter, we'll try again. And, people are also very open to it. On the other hand, there are very bureaucratic layers of management in a hotel that you have to go through when you have to do a concept and you have to ask his permission. He has to ask his
Parvinder, it's so
permission.
ironical, right? Yeah. So, and I grew up in Bombay. I used to see these iconic hotels.
Yes.
There's no way we could afford it.
Yeah.
I grew up in a very poor background.
Yeah.
I had an opportunity at one stage just to go inside and have a cup of chai or coffee. I'm not too sure about it. I was overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But I knew Taj Trattoria's tiffin box or tiffin at the Oberoi's.
Yes, right.
The Taj Ballroom had the all-day dining kind of restaurant. Then you have Tanjore, and then I'm sure Oberoi had one or two other restaurants. All the iconic restaurants belonged with the hotel, the IPs belonged with the hotel, and hence you mentioned those iconic chefs at that point in time, right? Chef Qureshi's and of course the Ilks.
Yeah.
And over the last 30 years, it's just that we have handed it over to the independent industry, which is good.
Yeah.
But looking at it even today, the industry is just not accepting that there is a huge problem. Where is that problem?
So I think the problem really is that, the hotels have still been so bound up with their standard operating procedures, the particular way in that thing has to be done, and the service has to be in this format. And our clientele has changed. The younger generation wants less fuss, wants more fun, wants less intrusive dining. So I think we have to evolve. We have to come up from this snobbish hospitality to a more inclusive hospitality.
How?
Okay, so there are two ways. I think there needs to be a collaboration between the hotels and the independent restaurants. I think we should be more open to bringing chefs from independent hotels, independent restaurants into five-star hotels to do pop-ups. And I see a lot of people have started doing that. And I think it's a great way forward.
Or have, let's say, an independent brand be part of the hotel.
Why not?
Why not?
I mean, when I trained in Melbourne, I'm talking about the year 2001. The hotel there worked like an Uber model. It had 3 restaurants, but all 3 were leased out
There you go.
to other chefs.
And that's late 90s.
Yes.
And here still we are talking 2024.
Correct.
And we
And I
haven't
was
evolved.
so amazed. The hotel was always full because, that one restaurant, and that time there were no Michelin stars. There still aren't Michelin stars in Australia. They call them hats. So there were 3 hat restaurants. There was a 2 hat restaurant. But the hotel was buzzing and full because they had a clientele coming to these restaurants. And F&B ruled the business. Sadly, in our country, it is the other way around. Yeah. It is the rooms that,
Yeah, but there are hotels, even in our backyard, where F&B still rules. Those are those iconic hotels where F&B is still ruling.
That is changing now, and I'm glad it's changing. That certain part of the budgets of F&B are much more than the rooms itself. So people are ready to invest in new technology, invest in new infrastructure, which I think will really change the scenario of the.
Food is such an emotional issue, and if you want to carry your brand forward or carry your story forward, get them to the hotel and let them experience food. They're not going to carry the room experience. They're going to carry these experience outside. So those hotels, some of the ITC brands, some of the Oberoi brand that you speak about, some of the restaurants are still iconic and, in my opinion, compete with independent restaurants, right? In every city, you're going to find these iconic restaurants within the hotels. But again, it's few.
I think those restaurants are like the movie Sholay.
For sure.
Every time it will come on the screen, I think people will still want to watch it.
Do you believe, again, as I say, do you believe there is lack of upskilling or innovation? What I'm trying to say is there is a certain hierarchy. Yeah. People go from a commie to a CDC to a junior chef to a... And that's by virtue of their tenure and not by virtue perhaps of their skill. Yeah. Are we doing enough for that upskilling?
No, I don't think so. I think that is where a lot of scope is there, where we need to focus more on the mid-management because they are at the most vulnerable state. When they join the hotels, they're very excited and they live first few years because they're learning. The curve is like really this way. True. The problem is when the curve is on a plateau.
After 3 or 4 years, now they find that it's more routine work.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think that is the time they break off their umbilical cords with the hotels and they want to explore the more greener pastures. I think this is where we need to step in and to say that, if this plateau cannot be created like this, can we create it like this? I think that is where is the scope.
Yeah, the investment in its employees, in its chefs, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who are going to put their creativity out there. You'll have more guests kind of coming in.
Yeah. So
right?
either sending chefs abroad. Abroad also at one point in time was that everything was happening globally in the
point. Your early days with Oberoi, as you rightly said, 3 weeks in early 90s or mid 90s, you were in Melbourne, and Mr. Oberoi at that point in time had the foresight to say that if I want to learn, and incidentally, see, I come from the aviation industry, our time pretty much clashed where Jet Airways, and God bless him, the chairman, Naresh Goyal, he also thought exactly the same. He sent all his managers to various airlines around the world. He's saying, if I want to be world class, don't sit here, right? On his money, his managers travel all around the world, experience all the business class, first class, economy services for 3 to 5 years. And say, bring those best practices back over here. And hence, at some stage, became an iconic airline.
No, I think he was very far-sighted. And I think he always believed that, a training is not worth it unless it's for a good duration of time. Minimum 45 days is what he had on his mind, that, that is what is the time required for you to work in the kitchen hands-on and understand.
And was that the philosophy of OCLD as well?
I think when I joined OCLD, I think again, Mr. Oberoi sent me to Culinary Institute of America. And again, this foresightedness, I was there for 3 months to do a pro-certified program. And it was so great. And as a vision, to think that, we are going to bring the best culinary practices on training and education. So Mr. Oberoi always, placed a lot of value on training and development and on the people. And I think that is one of the greatest assets that any company should have.
Is focus on the people. Tell me something, and you may choose not to answer. Yeah. My own sense about the group, the Oberoi group, is here you had this, I would say, one of the most revered chairmen, way decades ahead of his time. And he said, if I want to be world class, here's an Indian company, hospitality company, and to be adjudged the best, let's say, hotel in the world for years and continues to be, he says, you know what? I cannot rely on the education system outside of my hotel because I see mediocrity. I am going to create this layer where I'm going to get passionate people, right? And I am going to teach them the Oberoi way of life. I don't want anybody else to teach. Is this the philosophy as an outsider? If I have to, let's say, look into Oberoi's, can I derive this out of the Oberoi, especially the school?
I think to some extent, yes, because he wanted to create his own workforce. And he wanted to build a brand. You need to have people, everybody in the system talking the same language. And I think today, not only the employees, but I think even the guests talk the same language. I've heard many guests who, when come into the restaurant, sometimes say, "Chef, that music doesn't sound like an Oberoi hotel music." So even the guest has got so attuned to the service standards, and they walk into the hotel, and the guests themselves sometimes say that, how can you do this? We've never seen this happen in Oberoi's. So yes, I think it's a culture, and the culture is built not overnight. I mean, it's a
built over decades.
Over decades,
but I think
and
the
it's a constant thing.
culture was guest first. I don't care about profitability.
Okay, I mean, not in a very strong sense.
Yeah, but in a
Profitability is
layman,
always
right?
there. But yes,
What I'm trying to say, guest satisfaction,
Correct.
right there.
Absolutely.
Even if I have to lose money on the guest, if he steps out,
Yeah.
he needs to step out satisfied that
Yeah.
this has been an exceptional service.
We've always grown up with this thought at Oberoi Hotels that do anything and everything to please a guest, as long as it's ethical and not immoral. So I think those standards and the value systems are very highly entrenched, I would say, in all the employees.
You've been associated with them for how long?
Well, 30 years. I mean, I
And
only
with
left
OCLD?
17 years. Because when I came to OCLD in 2004, I really told Mr. Oberoi that, I would be only for 2 years. And if I would imitate him, in his own husky voice, he said, yeah, we don't keep any chef more than 2 years.
And that time Rohit Gandhi was there?
No, that time Mr. David Longworth was the dean.
After that?
After that came in, so there was a series of expats who came
Around
in.
2007, 2008?
Rohit
was there.
Rohit Dhar.
Right, Dhar was
Yeah,
correct.
Rohit Dhar was there. Of course, we were both partners in crime. We have some interesting stories together. But yes, I mean, Rohit was there, and I was like new kid on the block who had just come from hardcore operations. and I was into training and development. But even those times, when I was training at Oberoi Hotels, we only had executive chefs who were foreigners in all the hotels, even the pastry chefs, especially in all the metro hotels, there were only expats. And I think, like, to bring the global food in, Oberoi Hotels for 40 years have had the executive chefs and pastry chefs all coming from various parts of the world, from France to Germany, Europe, Far East Asia, etc. And I think we all learned and grew from it.
No, but I guess for the simple reason, India did not have its own French bakery pastry culture.
Absolutely.
India has its Indian culture.
Yes.
Right? And hence you had
Correct.
some iconic chefs coming for the Indian cuisine.
Absolutely. Right. But today I don't think there is any need of an expat chef unless there is a very skilled, you want a sushi chef or you want a Cantonese style of food where you want to have
very
things.
Highly special, Peruvian cuisine.
Absolutely. And that too, the world has become so it's shrunk.
Yeah. But today, when I kind of look at chefs, and again, I believe an Indian chef is multi-talented. By he, I'm talking in the neutral gender, he can do everything.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. Well, a French chef can only do a French cuisine and a Peruvian chef can do a Peruvian. Indian chef, if given the right guidance, right, can just about cut across everywhere.
2019 of July, I wouldn't name the hotel, but I went to Sicily to do an Indian food promotion. And I happened to taste the minestrone by the seaside of that hotel, and that's a beautiful hotel. And when I had the minestrone, I really smiled, and the GM was also eating with me, and the executive chef, he was a great friend of mine. And I said, chef, I can do a better minestrone than this. And they were so excited, and not like typical chefs who take it to the heart. He said, why not? Let's do it tomorrow in the tasting. And I got the team of all Italians and I made the minestrone. And trust me, that minestrone was served to the guests and each guest vowed. And it was not my recipe. I've also learned it from one of the Italian chefs.
That's absolutely fine.
But I think I was so bold enough to do the Italian minestrone in fine dining restaurant of that hotel in Sicily. Until date, they follow the same recipe.
So, young audiences है, right? आप मुझे बताओ हाथ का कितना कमाल है और दिल का कितना कमाल है on that recipe?
I think दिल का ज़्यादा है because you have to talk to your food and sometimes the younger generation doesn't understand this. Even in OCLD, I used to hear a lot of students smirk, not even see. When I used to tell them that talk to your ingredients, talk to the fire, be in that moment. When you're cooking, you know when to stir it, but stir it in a manner that how it needs to be stirred. The pan will tell you, it'll guide you. It's like doing a dance on the floor. You don't do something, you're not there to fight a war. So cook with heart. And once you cook with good thoughts, when you cook with good thought, the food will automatically become very tasty.
But tell me something, 17 to 18 years with OCLD, a little bit more than that, you would have, there could have been so many mentees who are executive chefs out there and who are doing really well all over the world. When you look at them, what is that feeling that you get today?
I think I feel really proud. One thing I don't like when people come up to me and start touching my feet, and I always say, hug me. Don't touch my feet. But I think it's an Indian culture. And I still have a lot of executive chefs who do that, who when meet me.
And you are a well-read man, and you know why they touch your feet?
Yes, I know, but I somehow always feel
it's bowing down purely in obeisance.
Yes.
It's like that Guru Shiksha.
Yeah.
आप गुरु के सामने झुकोगे, right? कोई लोग ऐसे झुकेंगे, कोई लोग ऐसे झुकेंगे, लेकिन झुकेंगे. I think this tradition and this culture is in India it cannot be compared with any other tradition or culture anywhere in the world where आप गुरु के सामने झुक रहे हो,
Yeah, but I always feel that there's a long way to go, and I always keep it like that. But
Parvinder, sorry to say, but देखो 3 realities है. एक आपकी reality, एक उनकी reality और एक actual reality. वो उनकी reality है. उनकी reality में आप गुरु हो. Don't deprive them of that.
So which is okay. I mean, so of course I always hug them, but I'm very proud to see there are so many of them. Manav Tuli is one great example who recently won a Michelin star chef. So there are a couple of Michelin star chefs across the world. There are executive chefs not even in the world, but there are executive chefs in our country. Not only Oberoi Hotels. One day I was sitting back and calculating, and I was feeling, oh my God, because now I have been teaching at OCLD for so long that almost all the executive chefs were my students at one point in time. I'm very proud to read their articles when it comes on things. Some of them do mention me. And I think when this podcast is out, you will hear a lot of comments where people will say that, Chef, aapne mujhe ye sikhaya tha, aapne mujhe wo bataya tha. And
how do you feel when you sleep at night? How do you feel?
I think it's amazing, and I think I get that feeling of a father when he feels proud that what his children have done. And I didn't understand this too well, but in last one decade, I think I've started understanding this more often, because पहले मेरे को लगता था ठीक है, I mean what have I done? मैं सिखाता हूँ, करता हूँ, but I think I've made a difference into their life, which is a great feeling.
Hence, I started off by saying that you're a revered chef, and that reverence comes from respect, and it takes decades to earn that kind of respect.
No, and today I'm very happy to even share on the podcast. At times I have kind of made the situation very difficult for a student,
and that's fine.
And which was on, and they've realized that very soon. And they've realized very soon that it was only to train them for the world ahead, where they're stepping into. Is not as considerate, because everybody, we are in the service industry. One man's food is another man's poison, so you cannot please everybody. You do not have control of what others will tell you, but there's always one person in your control, and that is yourself.
Tell me something, Parvinder. We are École Ducasse today here in India, right? This institution. You have seen CIA. I am influenced by 3-4 such institutions all around the world. At what time and what stage do you think that there would be consolidation and there could be 3 such CIAs in India, 3 such, we are trying to be them, right? It takes time, it takes decades. It's just a new journey for us. It's been 6-7 years. But our ultimate aim is to be that school of reference for culinary and hospitality, both at a skill level as well as a business level. But India is such a vast country. Why are we so underpenetrated? And why isn't, let's say, more and more people kind of coming up? And we are going to talk about your new stint after this. But why are more and more people coming up with this?
I think all these things which look like a moon away, whether it was the CIA or Indian Ducasse, today we are happy to see that, they are wanting their presence to be in India. And
True.
I think that is one of the things we need to ask ourselves and feel proud that such institutions are wanting that let's have a presence in India.
Yeah.
And Kunal, I'm telling you, in 10 years from now, we will not be emulating the outside world. The outside world will start opening what's in India as an extension abroad.
You're so right, Parvinder. I always say it's no longer made in India.
Yeah.
It will be made for India.
Correct.
And made for India and made for the world.
I think today, if you ask me after, the London, where, a lot of chefs had to leave and go. Today, I know most of my friends in London, they want Indian chefs to come on board. Because one, they say they're so hardworking.
Correct.
Second, they're so multi-skilled.
So
they're
right.
so talented. And this is not only London, but I think all across the world, people are looking for Indian chefs.
And not only Indian chefs, because of the multi-talented and diverse skills.
Absolutely. And I only think to the younger generation is, don't let yourself be used as a cheap labor. You have that skill.
True.
You have that, attitude. Be humble, but, demand in the outside global world the worth that you carry. And don't just be submissive.
True.
So I think that is the way that we as a country will really make a difference when we start demanding
And can I make a prediction?
Yes, please.
Right? And I really hope it comes true, but I believe this will be true.
Yeah.
That as much as we were the tech human capital export of the world, we would be a manufacturing exporters for the world. We will also be the chef exporters, the hospitality professional exporters for the world in the next 10 to 15
I totally,
years.
because this is in our blood.
Yeah.
Atiti Devo Bhava, you know, how we treat our guests. I mean, it's a natural instinct.
True.
And, you know, I was once in New York and I was in a very good hotel. Again, I will not name, but it was a 5-star hotel. And, you know, Mr. Oberoi always says that, you know, common sense is the most uncommon thing. And here was this exotic fruit basket that was kept in my room, but there was no knife to cut the fruit. And when I called the room service, you know what room service told me? Sure, sir, I will send the knife across to your room. It will cost $5. Wow. And I was here that, oh my God, there's an exotic fruit basket in your room and the guest is calling for a knife. You know, and then I suddenly thought to myself, in India, we would have asked the guest, I will send across somebody to pick up the fruit platter. We'll carve it out for you, sir.
You're so right. Firstly, I'm making a very generic statement that essence of hospitality, I don't think so they understand.
No.
For them, it's clean bed sheets, clean room, maybe, you know, temperature controlled, largest or largeness of the hotel, soul.
And when in India, we actually go and serve them from the heart, they sometimes doubt us. They think, oh, why they're over-servicing me? Do they want a tip? Yeah. So, you know, we also had this challenge post-COVID that, you know, we were so used, we were so attuned to serving a European customer that we actually started realizing that we don't know how to serve our Indian customers. Our Indian customers have so much of different needs that we had to redesign a program to say how to deal with an Indian guest.
When you're looking at the evolution of so many different cuisines in India, right? There's a Burmese cuisine which is happening, proliferation of that. Of course, Pan-Asian, various levels. Vietnamese which was never in the reckoning, is today in the reckoning. You have the Japanese cuisine coming in. Where is the Indian palate? Of course, the demand is there. That means the palate is changing. But do you think this is still a very city fad, or do you think this will go into the tier 2, tier 3 as well?
I think this is very culturally with us, you know, because when we want to go out, we want exotic. And for us, Indian is rarely exotic. And I'm not talking about the people who venture into 5-star establishment. I'm just talking here about a normal household. If they want to go out, it is rarely that, you know, people order Indian. Unless you are in a formal setup, dada dadi bhi saath hain. Otherwise, they will end up having, you know, an Italian, or let's go for a sushi, or let's go to an all-day dining restaurant where everybody gets the part of everything. And it's always a nana nani basically who grab the Indian meal, and rest are all, you know, trying to eat various things. We have Chirag Tale Andhera. We have never understood our food as exotic food unless it is set up in a place like a Wazwan, or projected as the royal gharanas of, you know,
Mewar or Jaipur,
correct,
or whatever it is.
So something where a story is built in, something where there is a substance to it and there's a marketing to it, and then people would like to explore and then say, wow, bahut badhiya tha, and yes. But I think as a generic outlook, for us, celebration is not an Indian food when we go out. And for that, again, the Indian clientele itself is very, very experimental. The Italians have never heard of pink pasta, but that is one of the most popular food, you know, even in hotels today.
And the sausage and the condiments, along with our pizzas or Italian or Asian, is not.
You know, as a chef, I've had such a troublesome time dealing with the fine dining Italian chef and the customers, where the chef says that I'm not going to have a croquette set of chili flakes and, you know, oregano on the table. This is not done.
Yeah.
It's a fine dining restaurant, and they believe if they don't like my food, the chef will pick up the plate from the guest and say, you go somewhere else. You know, in a 5-star establishment, my God.
I think in any establishment, I think eventually you need to suit to the palate of basically. So my question to you is, do you think Japanese cuisine, Burmese cuisine, Vietnamese cuisine, is it Bombay, Delhi, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Kolkata, or do you think this would be Patna and this could mean Indore and this will be Kashmir and this would be...
No, I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so, but maybe the brother sister of that could happen in a tier 2 city.
Got it.
Like maybe, thank God, and I hope nobody tries this tandoori sushi after the podcast.
Or tandoori chai. Or tandoori chai.
Yeah, but tandoori sushi is worse, you know, when you're dipping it into a batter or deep frying, and that could become like a sushi pakoda in a tier 2 city.
For sure.
But I don't think a sushi in a tier 2 city unless somebody knows that food and has come from there. But it'll not do great in a...
So मुझे एक चीज बताओ, how does an Indian chef innovate? Do you think, especially for cuisines like this, we still either have to import an expat chef or they need to go outside? And we are about 10 to 15 years away where we will have our own master sushi chefs and master. So until that time, do you think Indian students for super specialization, either institutions like us fly them down?
Yeah.
Or students perhaps go elsewhere? Do you think?
So I think food is like a fashion. And even if you look at Indian food in Singapore, it is not the butter chicken and dal makhani. It is the food of southern part of India. That is the Indian food in Singapore and all that. But if you go to London, it's more of a northern food.
But again, that's because there are more southerners in Singapore and there are more northerners.
But then for a global world, what is an Indian food? Is it somebody that Singaporean is eating, or is that somebody that the London is eating?
It's so diverse.
So food is diverse. And I think I would just urge the students, you know, practice your own mother cuisine. Focus on the basic skills. Focus on how a chicken reacts in a lower heat and a higher heat. There is always processes of cooking, methods of cooking, which are the most important. These are like learning the ABCs.
True.
ABC सीखने के बाद में start making the 3-letter word, where you combine chopped onion and chopped tomato with some spices to make onion tomato masala.
But ये immediacy generation है. इनको कैसे करें?
So we have to go back to the roots. We have to understand that when you're learning a language, you'll have to learn these ABCs. You have to learn the 3-letter words. Then you start making sentences. And then you go on to writing your essays. And then go on to analytical and creative writing. वो बहुत बाद में आती है. Kitchen is a discipline. Kitchen, कुछ भी YouTube से देख के बना दिया. People are focusing so much on, you know, how the food should look like.
But that's what you and me are thinking right now. But a 20-year-old serving a 20-year-old is not thinking like that. आप देख रहे हो?
हाँ.
Let's say your son and my daughters who are in their 20s or let's say late in their teens, that generation towards each other are not thinking like that.
So I think that is where the culinary education, I think that is where the education comes in front. And I'm sure that many people who listen to our podcast will also, some of them will start thinking differently. That खाना बनाना एक art है, कला है, but शेफ बनना एक एजुकेशन है. तो हर कोई खाना बना के शेफ नहीं बन जाता.
आई थिंक डॉक्टर बनना एक स्किल है.
हाँ.
आर्किटेक्ट बनना एक स्किल है.
या.
शेफ बनना एक स्किल है.
आई थिंक कुक बनना एक स्किल है.
एक स्किल है और स्किल के लिए 2 या 3 मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट इंग्रेडिएंट्स है. नंबर 1 शो अप.
या.
डिसिप्लिन.
एब्सोल्युटली.
और लगे रहो.
एब्सोल्युटली.
At some stage, you'll become a domain expert for that, and then you have to upskill.
Correct.
Then फिर लगे रहो.
Yeah.
Then you'll become another domain expert.
Yeah.
And this is a continuous process of
Absolutely.
learning.
Absolutely.
Leave it at some stage.
Yeah.
There will be 2 problems.
Yeah.
Either the food will suffer or the experience will suffer.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally believe in this, and I keep telling this to people. That, you know, a lot of times, and I've been very controversial sometimes when I talk about this thing between a home chef, जो बोलते थे, and I'm, you know, I've always grown up eating my mother's food, and I think she's the top class, you know, cook in the world because she's never been to a culinary school, but she cooks amazing.
So right.
So I'm very happy for all the house ladies who cook at home. But देखो जो chef बनना है ना, it is so आप cook तो अच्छे हो, but to become a chef, there are so many other things. You need to learn people management. You need to learn about kitchen financials. You need to learn about the equipment. You need to learn कि मेरे को गैस इसका thermal unit क्या है, you know, इस stainless steel का 304 क्या है,
for
sourcing, vendor
10
management.
के लिए अलग है, 50 के लिए उतना ही different है, 500 के लिए उतना ही different है. You know,
there is a thing called structural planning.
Organized. Yeah.
There is something called pre-prep. There is something called cooking a la minute. So,
are you seeing more women chefs now in the kitchen?
oh yes, and I'm very happy. And I always believed that, you know, there should be more diverse workforce in our kitchens. And I'm very, very happy to see women coming up in the kitchen.
And I personally, I like it because for me, a woman is a nurturer. They are better people managers, मेरे हिसाब से. And you'll be pleased to also note कि ISH में 55% of all students are women students. You know, that means now more and more women are embracing this sector and especially this skill.
No, I think it's also stemming from the fact that there's more education, more educated people who have started coming to the kitchen.
And there are more women role models also as
correct
chefs.
Also,
Yeah.
But मेरे time क्या होता था, I'll tell you, when I joined hotels, the people that I worked with were not so educated. They were 20 years elder to me, and they would talk very rudely. There was a lot of abuses in the kitchen, and I think a lot of people today, the younger generation, finds it very cool that, you know, oh, the chef is abusing and all that. And I think I'm totally against it. And I said, you know, it is to work in a professional kitchen, please treat each others like you want to be treated. And you wouldn't want to be abused. So, हर काम कराने के लिए आपको शोर नहीं मचाना है. आपको pots and pans नहीं फेंकने हैं. आपको crockery नहीं तोड़नी है. There are a lot of other ways where you can get the work done. And of course, kitchen is a very high pressure zone. But the more educated you are, the more you are in control, the more experienced you are, the more skilled you are. मेरे पेरेंट्स हमेशा कहते थे कि जो खाली बर्तन है ना, वो हमेशा ज्यादा बचते हैं. तो भरे हुए बर्तन रो, भरे हुए पेड़ की तरह रो जो हमेशा झुका रहता है. That is very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you don't really necessarily have to scream, shout, break things and treat people badly. Just get together as a team.
I think वो culture खत्म भी हो गया और ये generation will not even accept that.
Yeah.
From that perspective, because they are outspoken.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they will let people know.
Yeah. But there's
our
still
own
a
children
generation
also
gap.
let us know if we are doing something wrong, right?
But there's still a generation gap.
Yeah.
There are still people at the
For
executive
sure.
chef level who always felt that, you know, what was good for me is good for them.
Yeah.
And I think it is the people of my generation actually who are more culprit, because they need to be more accepting of the younger generation.
This generation will force the change on.
हाँ.
आप आज नहीं change करोगे,
बिल्कुल.
People will not join you.
Yeah.
Then there's a different segment of people will join you, and you will be forced to change. I always kind of, from a thing perspective. You have now full-time stepped into an academic role.
Yes.
Right? Talk about this new journey for yourself.
So, well, it suddenly happened, I would say overnight. And I don't know why. I had never thought of that one day I will step into opening up my own culinary venture. But things happened, and I'm very happy that I'm opening up my own culinary school here in Gurgaon itself. We already have one running in Mumbai. It's called School for European Pastry, but this is School for European Pastry and Culinary Arts. Teaching and training has always been one of my things on the top list. Even when I was not a formal culinary educator, I was still training, I was still showing. So that has been in my blood from day one. But I think when I formally do it, it's also because, you know, you yourself are learning so much from the younger generation, from their perspective. Because sometimes our own experiences can hinder our own learning.
Tell me something, Parvinder. How can India, today we have world's best business schools, we have world's best engineering schools, right? Forget the ranking, but truly in the Indian ecosystem, they're excellent. How can we, your venture, my venture, how can we truly attract, let's say, people from Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand? How can we become the culinary education destination of India, in your opinion?
You know, I was always fascinated by Nalanda University. और कभी मैं मिस्टर मोदी जी से मिलूंगा ना, बोलूंगा नालंदा यूनिवर्सिटी हम 2-3 culinary लोगों को दे दो. And like we used to run a Nalanda University, we'll run a culinary university of India.
Yeah.
Where the world over people will come and learn the Ayurvedic cooking, the Indian cooking, the cooking in the terracotta pots, the cooking dug into the ground. I really want all these ancient cooking things to come up to the surface, to talk about.
So Culinary Institute of India.
Yes. I mean, something like that of a stature that, people start associating and people think कि अगर culinary Indian सीखना है, तो this is the place to go.
और मेरा ड्रीम पता क्या है? Being in the top 3 for both hospitality and culinary. I really want us as India.
Yes.
Us as India. If we can create the best CEOs for the world, if we can create the best financial analysts for the world, global capability centers are here. I want to have India to be featured in the best F&B, business, culinary, every aspect for the world. And I think, मुझे फिर कह रहा हूँ, viscerally लगता है in the next 10 years, India will be able to do this.
I mean, I totally agree, and I think I would also urge lot of culinary institute which are mushrooming up everywhere. That सिर्फ एक culinary institute खोलने से कुछ नहीं होता. I think you need to invest in the right culinary educators, in the right infrastructure, because I don't think it is for the benefit of the students. आप उनको एक अच्छी नाइफ नहीं दे रहे हो, एक अच्छा वर्क एनवायरनमेंट नहीं दे रहे हो जो उनको होटल में मिलने वाला है. They will be totally in different.
But I'll tell you what will happen, and I've been in this education for some time, that Indian consumer is so smart. आप उसको एक बार बुद्धू बना दोगे, आप उसको 2 साल बुद्धू बना दोगे, right? They will reject all of them, and they will eventually seek quality institutions in India. This pattern has been very evident in business school today. The proliferation which happened of B schools, सारे बंद हो गए. जितने tech schools जो B grade, C grade, सारे बंद हो गए. And you have consolidation which has happened. खुलेंगे, अपने आप बंद हो जाएंगे. Only, as you rightly said, quality people who are advancing their careers, true to their profession of education, right, and building for India will survive.
So I think we should focus on quality. We should focus on that student and, mentor that student. Take him under your umbrella.
So now, since you are in Gurgaon, we are in Gurgaon, let's make Gurgaon that food capital. I would say culinary education capital.
Absolutely.
It can't get better than this.
Absolutely.
Right? And I kind of love that kind of space. Now, थोड़ा सा है ना, इसमें हम fun segment लेके आने वाले हैं. You're also known as the cycling chef. ये cycling कहाँ से आया? Then I'll give you my story. After I heard your story around 3 or 4 years ago.
So I think I owe everything to OCLD. Trust me. जब मैंने आपको पहली बात कही थी ना कि I joined OCLD because 5 days a week. That lasted only for 3 months in my life. 3 महीने मैंने बहुत enjoy किया 5 days a week. And trust me, after 2.5 months, I would say, I was sitting there twiddling my fingers to say, boss, ये नहीं होगा मुझसे. What do I need to do now? And I think there was a lot of time at hand when I, first started writing my books. So first 4 years, 5 years went in writing my books. And I'm not joking. I used to type for like 12 to 13 hours every day on my off days. Saturday, Sunday went in that. My daughter was growing up, and every time she saw me sitting on the computer, she learned this phrase कि पापा book लिख रहे हैं. So even when she was grown up and I would work on a computer, she was asking me कि book लिख रहे हो? So I wrote books. After books, I had again a lot of time at my hand and Saturdays, Sundays, and then I started enrolling myself into Spanish. So I'm a 3-year literature in Spanish. So I go to a lot of Spanish-speaking countries.
So cycling chef and a multilingual chef.
Yeah. So that happened for 3 years. And thereafter, then I said that, I have to do something about my weight because my weight was really going up and, the age was catching on and all that. So I tried gymming, dieting, nothing worked. Until one day I was driving past Gurgaon and I saw a fleet of cyclists with very thin wheels and, they were gliding past. And I थोड़ा आगे जाके रुका, मैंने उनको रोका. Then I started asking them. They said, कुछ नहीं है, बस ये cycle है normal. So I think that is what I tried, and I think there was no looking back. It was so fun.
Love at first sight.
Absolutely. And
it's like how chef was at first sight.
Yes.
Right? That was the first love. So cycling for you was the love.
And I think I was more intrigued by that thin wheels, their attire, the colorful helmets, and the teamwork. That was so important.
Do you feel safe on Indian roads when you cycle now?
Well, I think you have to ride with the mindset that the fault is always yours. Even when you're right, you're wrong. उस mindset से चलाओगे तो you have to be careful. I would urge people who cycle on Indian roads, please don't put music in your ears. Treat it like a meditation. And I think that is what has really... So cooking and cycling have integrated very well for me. Because I think it's taught me consistency. It's taught me perseverance. It has taught me that, you can still go beyond that pain and twitch in the muscle.
And that presence of mind.
And presence of mind, which is very, very important.
So, अब मेरी इस कहानी सुनो. एक बार मैंने आपको रोड पे देखा, साइकिल करते हुए. Or I took up cycling.
Really?
Yes.
So I think that is very infectious.
Yes, absolutely. and I saw your colorful, and I've always wanted to do that. Right? And I said, okay, you know what? And I also love the sport. Maybe I'm not as good as you are, but maybe in a year's time when I'm fully fit, we can go in that group as part of the long ride.
Kunal, I want to ride from Kashmir to Kanyakumari.
Super.
And my idea is very different, and I'm happy the viewers are listening to us. What I want to do is start from Kashmir. After every 100 kilometers, I've chalked out the map route map. It's 3,475 kilometers. I will want to touch after every 100 kilometer. I will touch a catering college. I will cook with the students, and evening rest, and then next morning again go off to another location. 4 months before, I will give the catering college 4 or 5 lost recipes around their area to find out and research. So I'll go there and cook with them. So when we cover 33 colleges over that 33 days, we will also come up with a book of lost recipes of a country, which are tried, tested, made for the country. So this is my...
So let me put you in a spot. ऐसे कौन सोचता है आजकल?
Sardar.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. What's your favorite dish to cook after a long cycling trip?
So after a long cycling trip, I would cook up dreams actually.
Okay.
But I think if I have to quickly cook something, I think it would be any day dal, chawal, khichdi. I love that. I love basic, simple Indian food. Good moong dal and with ghee, cow ka ghee, and aloo gobi ki sabzi and rice is my favorite.
If you wake up tomorrow in the morning and if you have to take one cycling buddy with you who incidentally is a chef from any part of the world, including India,
I think Gordon Ramsay.
Why?
Because Gordon is very active on cycling.
Correct.
I see a lot of his posts.
Correct. And poor guy had that accident a couple of days ago.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I really want him to come with me on the Indian road trip where we create something called Chef on Wheels. So we'll go on a cycling trip. We'll spot at all the food. We'll stop at all the food which is served on the ready, and we'll create some magic.
तो मुझे एक चीज बताओ, साइकिलिंग जब नहीं करते हो, न्यू वेंचर में अभी जब नहीं सोचते हो, तो क्या करते हो डे ऑफ पे?
So I have revived my another hobby, which is flute. So my Guruji, Pandit Rohit Anand, is disciple of Pandit Ravi Shankar. I'm learning classical flute, bansuri from the Mayer Gharana. So I do a lot of practice of flute. 1 घंटा रियाज मेरे को रोज करना पड़ता है. But ideal day off, I would really be sitting under a breezy tree, and I can play flute for like 5-6 hours. And I think that is such a peaceful thing. And I think every Saturday or Sunday weekend I go for a class. तो वैसे क्लास 2 घंटे की होती है, but my wife always tells me that you spent almost 5 hours, 6 hours. So I think that is one of the...
Come towards the last segment, Parvinder. I can't possibly let you go without you telling us what kind of a legacy would you like to leave? Eventually, once we all have our passing one day, when somebody is looking at Parvinder Bali, what do you think he or she would remember you for?
So I think work hard, party harder. Please have an hobby. I keep telling people that, it's a very stressful environment to work as a chef or a hospitality professional. It's very stressful. And you will eventually burn down very fast. So please have time for people. Please have time for something that you love doing. I think love yourself first. If you love yourself first, then you love everybody around. I would like people to remember me for never shouting and screaming in the kitchen, but still getting the work done. Mentorship, I think it's very important. When you reach a phase in your life, you always have to think about the younger generation who's coming up, and you have to stand there. You have to mentor them, and because they are the next ones who have to come in the thing. So stop hiding those recipes. Stop hiding those, things that you learned the hard way. Teach them.
Your eventual Sardar of India, would it be that?
Pata nahi, but I think whatever life I live, I think I want people to be really. So there'll be two type of people. One will say that I was very fortunate that I worked with Chef Bali, and I want the other persons to feel that, oh, I missed that opportunity to work with him.
If you had to ask me any questions, what would it be? Anyone else?
So I think I would really ask you that question that, in such a busy place and all, Kunal, where do you drive this energy from?
From people like you. And I genuinely say that. There is, for you, as much as there is a mission, for me also that mission is there. I truly, truly believe in that India story. I truly, truly believe that it's, लोग कहते हैं कि the next decade belongs to India. I believe the next century belongs to India. I think the US had its sheen, China had its sheen. Where we are today, regardless of the polity in India, regardless of whatever happens in India, right, we will outshine in that world. And through our children, through the next generation and the next generation, if India, we can collectively have 1.4 billion middle class, I would say, right? Elevate everybody from the poverty to lower middle class to middle class. And that can only happen through good health and good education. और कुछ भी नहीं, मेरे हिसाब से. So, वो सोच के मैं आज काम कर रहा हूँ. I'm sure the next generation will take over from us. The next generation, but it needs to start somewhere. So that's something which I have. It's an absolute pleasure, which I told you. No, seriously, thank you for opening up. Thank you for giving so much of kind of wisdom to our audiences. And as I had kind of promised you earlier, they don't make legends. Legends are born out of grind and the grit and the environment that they belong to. I truly, truly believe that Parvinder, my brother Veere, Dr. Chef Parvinder Bali is one of those personalities who will be known in the culinary world, in the culinary landscape of India for generations to come. I hope you watch this podcast. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I had the pleasure in talking with him. God bless. And as always, Namaste, Salam, Sat Sri Akal, and Adab.
And lastly, I would say Jai Hind.
Jai. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, lovely.